Hi, George Rogers here again to share with you some thoughts and ideas and insights I've gained over the past 25 years of developing educational materials. Today I want to share with you the story of a young slave boy by the name of Frederick Douglass and how he escaped from slavery. Physical bondage, is only one form of slavery. Addiction is another, and I believe it perhaps may be more degrading and soul-destroying than physical bondage. And certainly it is destroying enough large numbers of our youth today. Beyond that, there are many, I believe a great many, who are paralyzed by problems they feel powerless to solve. And still others are held hostage to self-defeating attitudes and beliefs that limit their opportunities and frankly often get them into trouble. If all these and many more, perhaps all of us, could learn the lesson to be taught by this young slave boy, it could open up whole new worlds of opportunity for us. So I'd like to invite you to listen in now as I share with you what a young 8-year-old slave boy can teach us about the answer to insight question number 7. What is the most important skill a young person can develop? Now, I realize there are many important skills young people can and do need to develop. But if you strip everything down to bare essentials, I believe the skill I would choose is a skill that enabled Frederick Douglass to escape the tyranny of slavery. Creative problem solving. To illustrate why I chose this particular skill, I would like to share with you the story of how Frederick Douglass learned to read and write. It's such an important lesson, I believe every young person should know his story. By way of background, Frederick was born a slave in the early 1800s. He never knew who his father was. His mother was on another plantation and had to walk all night just to see him for a few minutes and to be able to get back in time for her work in the fields the next day. So he only actually saw her a few times in his life. And like other slave children on that plantation, he was only clothed in a linen shirt and was fed cornmeal mush out of a trough, much as pigs are fed. As a result, he was often both hungry and cold. About the age of 8, he was sent to live with a Mr. and Mrs. Auld in Baltimore, to be their servant. Conditions were much better there. He had clothing and plenty to eat, but he was still a slave. The Aulds had a boy about Frederick's age, and shortly after arriving in their home, Mrs. Auld began teaching Frederick the ABCs along with her son. That is, until one day, Mr. Auld walked in on them, and when he saw what she was doing, became unglued. Although his language was very coarse, in essence what he told her is that if she taught him the ABCs, it would forever unfit Frederick to be a slave. All at once, as Frederick describes, a great mystery was unfolded to him, and he understood the power of the white man over the black, and determined he would learn to read and write. However, at this point, Mrs. Auld was no longer an ally, but was an opponent, and forbade him access to any form of reading or writing material. However, now Frederick was determined. He was able to find a small book, and at this time one of his responsibilities was to run errands for the family. He also had access to plenty of bread. In his neighborhood there were a number of little white boys who knew how to read but were less fortunate in having food. He settled on a plan whereby he would run his errands early and trade them bread to teach him how to read. In this manner, over a period of years, he learned how to read. How Frederick learned to write about the age of 12 was no less imaginative and no less inspiring. Near where he lived was a shipyard. On the wood pieces, which were prepared for a ship, the workers would mark in chalk the letters L for larboard, S for starboard, A for aft, and F for forward. If a piece was marked SF, it meant starboard, forward, and so forth. Frederick learned these 4 letters. Then he would find a white boy and say to him, "I know more letters than you do." The boy would say, "No, you don't." Frederick would say, "Yes, I do." They would argue a bit, and then the other boy would say, "Show me." At that point, Frederick would take a stick and draw the letters he had learned in the dirt and say, "Beat that." The boy then would look at the letters and write some letters of his own in the dirt, which Frederick would note. and then he would go and repeat the process with another boy. Later on, when the young Ald boy had used up some of his copybooks, and these copybooks were set aside and never referred to again, and Frederick would get them and write over the boy's writing time and time again, until, in his own words, "Thus, after a tedious effort for years, I finally succeeded in learning to write." Can you see from this example the importance and benefits of creative problem solving? Here was a slave boy, without a book, a pencil, or even a piece of paper of his own. The closest thing he had to family opposed his every effort, yet with nothing to commend him but a hunger for learning, inspired by an understanding of the nature of slavery and a vision of hope, he was able to muster the initiative, commitment, persistence, and patience necessary to learn how to read and write. And over a number of years, he was able to succeed. To download a copy of Frederick Douglass's experiences in his own words, just click on the link below this video. I hope you choose to be part of our ongoing conversation on how to supply the missing piece in children's education. You can do so by regularly visiting our website at choiceskills.com and checking out our blog, and also participating in our blog. It's a two-way conversation, and we hope that you'll contribute to what thoughts you may have to offer, and if you happen to be using any of our lessons, to offer any suggestions on your experiences with those. At any rate, thanks for being with me, and success to you in teaching your children things that matter most.